Welcome to this series of readings of the Mechanization concept, a manifesto by the Great Divine Director. There are 22 parts to these releases by the Great Divine Director. He has asked that they be read in the order of their release. I'm Caroline Hansky, the reader. The teachings were given by the Great Divine Director through the messenger Mark L. Prophet in 1965. Permission was granted for reading them and making them available to the general public in audio form. These readings are from Mark and Elizabeth Prophet, The Mechanization Concept, The Mysteries of God on the Creation of Mechanized Man, Pearls of Wisdom, Volume 8, Teachings of the Ascended Masters, Summit University Press, copyright Church Universal and Triumphant, 1965. They are also published as Mark L. Prophet, the Soulless one, Cloning a Counterfeit Creation, copyright 1965, 1980, 1981, Summit University Press. Why would you want to listen to and or read these releases? Because the message in them is as important now, or even more so, as when it was originally delivered. The message is serious and ought to be taken seriously. The mechanical, non-human creation, not created by God ones, are among us, and have been for thousands of years. We have taken on their consciousness to some degree and must free ourselves from it. Prayer and working on our psychology are two ways of doing this. But first we must be aware of what the mechanical consciousness is. These releases by the Great Divine Director are for this purpose. What makes this so relevant at this time? If you are following the news of the development of robots for every conceivable purpose, then is it not curious that this is made to seem a new development? As these current robots are portrayed, they are obviously mechanical. Yet, just as obvious from the Great Divine Director teachings is the fact that the robots that have been on the earth for thousands of years appear like humans. We don't know the difference. Then why is it important to make us think this is a new advanced development? Something to ponder. The Great Divine Director is a cosmic being with many offices in the spiritual hierarchy. For example, he is a member of the karmic board in which he represents the first ray of God power. He is known as the Great Divine Director because he has merged his consciousness with the cosmic cycles of God's divine plan for untold universes of light. Great Divine Director is a title of an office in the cosmic hierarchy, given to the one who, by virtue of diligent application over the eons, focuses within his causal body the formula of the ascension for the children of God and the sons and daughters of the Most High evolving in this cosmos. The causal body is the spiritual part of us in which is stored our attainment, all merit we have ever accrued, our treasures stored in heaven. The Great Divine Director's causal body is a giant blue sphere that surrounds the entire planet. Thus his attainment of cosmic consciousness qualifies him to ensoul the flame of divine direction on behalf of Earth's evolutions and untold lifeways beyond. The Great Divine Director long ago passed those initiations that placed him at cosmic levels of service and qualified him to become the Manu of the seventh root race. A Manu embodies the archetype for an entire life wave of souls who will incarnate on Earth at a certain period, including the divine image and likeness out of which they are made and the pattern of their destiny. The seventh root race is destined to embody first in South America under the Great Divine Director, and so he presides spiritually over the continent of South America. He is then the lawgiver and sponsor of the seventh root race, the one who holds the blueprint for the entire race of the souls who begin their embodiment in the age of Aquarius that is now dawning. Godfrey Ray King, author of the book, The Magic Presence, describes the Great Divine Director in it. This majestic being stood fully 6 feet 4 inches in height, with wavy hair that fell to his shoulders and looked like sunshine on gold. His robes glittered with points of light like jewels that flashed continually with the tremendous radiance of the power held under his control and obedient to his conscious direction. The girdle encircling his waist was a mass of sapphires and diamonds. From it hung a panel to a few inches below the knees. This also was a mass of jewels. End of quote. The great divine director has said, I pray that you will call to me, for I have within my consciousness the scroll of the divine plan for every living soul on Terra and in the vast beyond. The Mechanization Concept, a manifesto by the great divine director, Part M, Man. To that man who is the manifestation of God, I unveil the infinite self that is obscured by the veils of the finite self. I place before you your human ego, born of a mechanized sense consciousness, the idolater of the mechanical world sense, side by side with the mechanical man, the godless, soulless creation of laggard scientists, and I summon you to forsake the former for your own mighty I Am presence, whereby you shall surely vanquish the latter and its sinister strategies. The beauty of man is obscured by his finite self. The infinite creation is hidden behind the mask of the finite. Thus the infinite stands ever at the door of awareness, awaiting the reception of the willing consciousness. Whereas man has probed physical science to great depths, he has but skimmed the surface of the powers of the mind and being of man. The tastes of men differ greatly, for that which some men abhor in nature, others admire. Now the consciousness itself is a fascinating study. If man were divested of his physical garments, and then it were possible to strip him also of his mental and emotional bodies, leaving pure, unfettered consciousness, you would have the real individual in his God-given estate. It must be borne in mind that layer upon layer of experience has contributed to the identity of man, and that much is of that which has been added to the original creation which God saw as very good, has been the substance of human discord. Both Jesus and St. Paul, referring to this discord, pointed out that God often left the wheat to grow up with the tares, lest in plucking up the tares he destroy also the wheat. The ploy of mankind's earthiness so commingles with the roots of his worldly culture as to almost defy separation. But the percentage of the real man at evidential manifestation in relation to the artificial creation is very small. This fact indicates the great need for transmutation, and it pinpoints the reason for the statement of John the Beloved, the whole world lieth in wickedness. St. Paul indicated that the fire should try every man's work of what sort it would be, and the residue would be that which was of true worth. For only the unadulterated attributes of God and their reflection in the pure consciousness of man could withstand the baptism of the sacred fire. He phrased this, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work, of what sort it is. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Life is often a great mystery to embodied men, for it is difficult for them, when in the body, to recognize their great spiritual source, and to establish and maintain contact with the invisible world. Yet, precious ones, it is not so difficult to determine your moorings if you will realize how completely factual it is that you were embodied upon this planet a certain number of years ago, and according to that, the old adage of 70, you have only the possibility of exceeding this expected tenure, and no guarantee. You know that few can retain any memory whatsoever of their past prior to birth, and I allow that there are exceptions. Hence you have builded in consciousness, in the span of a few years, a great wealth of experience. But, precious ones, I'm certain that if you will ponder this a bit, you will recognize that your present knowledge far exceeds the cumulative sense of life gained through the passing years. Since the manifestation called man so frequently feels a sense of immortality, he often develops a very dedicated sense of I am. But sometimes this sense of being extends only to self-identity rather than to God's self-identity. It is the acknowledgement, I think, therefore I am. But men must come to realize and to know that that which thinks in them is God, the I am that I am, and therefore that which is, that which exists and has being in man, is God. Thus the overshadowing of mortality by immortality sustained man's tie to his God reality, to whom, whether or not it be acknowledged, the finite self must bow. One of the confusing factors concerning the universal being of God and the universal consciousness is the state of individualization. Some will ask, are we then a mere mechanical accumulation of experiences, so that our reality is actually one conglomerate soul? There are many mysteries here, and it is our wish to clear up mankind's speculation upon this subject. Let us acknowledge, then, that God, who is our life, has given to all the power of the I Am Presence, individualized for each man. When the Presence turns its attention upon man, and the smiling face of its glorious radiance is first observed by mankind, it is in this gaze that there is conferred upon men self-awareness. And man then, using the consciousness of God, beholds himself in self-conscious awareness and declares, why, I am, and so he is. Let it be noted that there are facets and provisions made in the Godhead, whereby the mighty I Am Presence does gather around itself in space, and I refer to the individualized I Am Presence, the beautiful emanations of the divine attributes of God expressed by individualized man. These form the color spectrum bands of the causal body. This is the individuality, the true individuality of man. St. Paul referred to the great individualized reality of the causal body in this wise, saying, one star differeth from another star in glory, so also is the resurrection of the dead. You have observed that mankind are not alike, and yet they are not unalike. The advent of genius is known to you. The sadness of idiocy is also a part of life. But surely no one can deny that in the human spectrum of consciousness there are vast differences which may be categorized and recognized. The admonishment, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him, spoken by the beloved Jesus, contains a great germ of truth which now prepares us to separate the mechanical aspects of man's being from the realities. And we allude here to the difference between the personal ego, wherein mankind lay up treasures upon earth, and the great causal body wherein the treasures of heaven are stored. The ego is born of sense consciousness. But let us return for a moment to Jesus' statement. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. See in this how clearly the Christ has pointed out, not that it is strong to love nature, not that it is wrong to love nature or the physical aspects of the planet, but rather the material, mechanical sense of building a separate world or an identity that is apart from the great world of God identity, your own mighty I Am Presence. Jesus knew that to build this world of separation would shorten the days of mankind's existence and ultimately cut him off from life itself. It was, therefore, an act of his infinite love and grace that prompted him to warn mankind that the pursuit of earthly pleasure would deprive them of everlasting life. On the other hand, he gave the recipe for inheriting life. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. And he further stated, my words are life and truth. These statements bear witness to my release, which is also able to give you eternal life if you are willing to believe. Men overlook and underlook far more than they see. They are inclined to discount some of our spiritual releases as being either too simple or too wise, too learned. When we make a statement in basic simplicity, some say it has no learning or food for the soul. When we make it in a grand manner, some say that it is too difficult to be discerned and too intellectual. Precious ones, the ascended masters have given their life's energy for mankind, and I am releasing the substance of my own being into this series of discourses for the love of the mankind of earth. To find a median way to reach all is difficult for us, for it is man's capacity to comprehend that shifts, not ours. We have a special grace which comes to all ascended beings, a special means of attuning with the Akashic records, a means of perceiving otherwise hidden aspects of the karmic records of this planet and its people. We can probe not only the near and distant past, but even into the future through the power to discern projected karmic patterns and laws of probability. We wield a power which very few among mankind can appreciate, or even power becomes relative to man's sense. It is like one man saying to another, "I will make you rich, rich, rich." If he be a beggar with a tin cup, this may consist of $10,000. If he be a man with farms and homes, he might consider it to be $1 million or $2 million. And if he were a tycoon of finance, he might think in terms of billions. It is so easy, precious ones, for mankind to de-emphasize or to overemphasize various facts of their lives. And therefore, when we speak of the flame of illumination and the flame of balance, it is because we have a great yearning to see our children express that God balance, which will enable them to understand not only those mysteries of which we speak, but also the hidden wisdom of the heart, which God yearns to impart to all that they might have abundant life and all that Jesus promised. Let us now spell out the destiny of the human ego. You have heard it said that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. You have heard me say through these pages that the original divine patterns or image of God was that which God saw in the beginning and called very good. The creation of the divine image, then, individualized for each man, was the sole reality around which could be builded consciousness and the magnetization of every good and perfect gift which would endure for all time. You have also recognized that mankind, from the great to the small, do not endure, but come and go as the passing of the seasons. Because of the imperfections of the human ego and mankind's exploitations of one another, it is well that the law has interfered with his lifespan. For if that lifespan were to be prolonged, as it was in the days of Methuselah, evil would flourish in a greater degree than it did at the time of the flood of Noah. Let no one sense morbidity in aught which I say here, for the glories of the divine kingdom, world without end, far surpass even the most happy experiences of life on earth. Yet adjustments must be made. Lord Bulwer-Lytton, in his writing called The Coming Race, revealed certain facts concerning the creation of mechanical man, that is, the creation of automatons. Those who wish to read the story which he told concerning the descent of a young man into the earth and his finding of a strange city and its exalted inhabitants may do so if they are so inclined. I promise you, and I shall not fail, that I will have some surprises in store for you, and I wish to plant one such surprise in your consciousness here and now. These facts may startle some, but I speak them in order that all may be forewarned. Now goodness is of God, and it is your most precious possession. You must guard virtue and honor and love and illumination, that they may expand in your worlds and never be extinguished. For just as there exists upon earth in the physical octave that which mankind call evil, which manifests as man's inhumanity to man, so in other parts of the universe there do exist certain conditions which are similarly malevolent. In the history of the cosmos, back in long forgotten, dim and past ages, there are records of other civilizations which have risen and fallen due to the presence of embodied evil. When man begins to understand God in a grander manner than do the evolutions living upon earth today, they will be able to understand many of the mysteries of the universe that are not presently grasped. Now, the dear Christian scientists maintain that there is no reality in evil or death. Yet, in their grand newspaper called the Christian Science Monitor, they do bring before the public many of the untoward conditions which are occurring upon the planet today. I cite this in passing to show that even that which is known to be unreal to the Godhead has its effect upon the world scene and the consciousness of man, even though admittedly it is a temporary effect. And so you may consider that these old histories of past civilizations, where the power of both good and evil entered in, are relatively unimportant to you today. But this is hardly true, even as such conditions existing today are not unimportant. For it is well that mankind understand the origin of evil, seen as they understand the origin of good, in order that they may effectively eliminate the cause and core of that which seemeth to be, but is not. Long ago, from a certain system of worlds, there came bands who descended to earth, the hordes of shadow, who were invited here by mankind, for mankind thought by the power of good, example, to elevate the consciousness of the laggard bands. Now it is not so well known that these laggards were accompanied by some who were not invited. Some of these brought knowledge to mankind and to the earth, and some of this knowledge was degenerative and destructive. In addition, they also brought with them strange creatures of their own creation, seemingly intelligent beings not created by God, however, but by advanced scientists on other systems of worlds. The extent of the evil of these hordes and that of their mechanical creations has been very great, and the oppression they have wreaked upon mankind has been terrible to behold. The infiltration of the planet by these creatures is indeed a manifestation of human creation, not of the divine creation. God did not create evil, neither did he create destruction, nor hatred, nor egoism, nor any form of vanity whatsoever. Now the whole and complete story of this will not be given in the Pearls of Wisdom, for sound reasons. Perhaps more light can be shown on this subject through the Keepers of the Flame fraternity. We shall see. I do not bring forth this information in order to frighten any, but to warn mankind that there are beings among them who are not the creation of God, who are not possessed with the same beautiful electronic pattern and causal body with which a manifestation of God is endowed. I propose no so-called witch hunt. I propose that no one search out specifically these beings for identification, for your own mighty I Am presence is the fullness of all that you desire, and I urge that the result of this release of knowledge shall be that you will turn more and more to God for your supply of every good thing, that you will determine more than ever to be alert to assist the mankind of earth in overthrowing absolutely all that is darkness and shadow and pain upon the earth planet. In order to do this and to break the monstrous plots which the sinister strategies have launched upon mankind, harmony and unity must remain the forte of all who love the light. Sincerely, the great Divine Director.